I mean, we can help to publish this in Iraq,
Sure,
for
sure.
example.
If you've got a stick, I can put it on
Yeah,
a stick.
I have a stick.
Yeah.
And we will have video also. It's
If you send it to us, we can put it
YouTube
on the
Radioactive
homepage.
Well, it's
BSR
quite big.
channel,
So you need
Radioactive
to take it on a
BSR.
stick, but it's quite hard to, I mean, I could put it up on Dropbox or something. I want to show you this picture. These are some of these weird, strange weapons that are occurring. You know, this child here is unharmed except for a stripe which just goes across his body. And the stripe is just extraordinary. So it's just burned his arm completely off. Do you see? And these are not any weapons that anybody knows about. We've got a weapons group in Italy who've been collecting evidence of this sort of thing. And there are some very strange wounds. The people are dead for no reason. Their body is slightly swollen and they can't find any reason for it at all. So this suggests to me that there may be some neutron type weapon out there that we need to get the military to come clean about. We have to do this. Anyway, sorry, I'm burbling on a bit. Questions, please. Yeah, sure.
Why do you think there's such a total lack of interest in large parts of the scientific community? I can understand the governments, but the scientists I can't understand.
They're frightened. They're frightened. Everybody's frightened. Everybody. They're frightened of losing their money. They're frightened of being killed. At the moment we have Fukushima. I have to tell you that I'm really involved in there. I've been out to Japan. People, their lives are being threatened. The government is in with the nuclear industry, and people are powerless. People are just scared, and there's no money to do this research. Nobody put them. I was also interested in doing research on the Baltic Sea. The Baltic Sea is highly radioactive because of contamination from Chernobyl and weapons fallout, and people living along the shores of the Baltic Sea are dying as a result of this. We know from work by Martin Tondell that people in northern Sweden are dying as a result of cancer from Chernobyl at quite low doses. Now the problem in Sweden, you have the medical officer of health is a man called Lars Erik Holm. He is the person who is in charge of all research in Sweden into medicine and into these sorts of effects, and he is the ex-head of the International Commission on Radiological Protection. So he is like a top man in the nuclear industry. He is now advising the Japanese government that there will be no outcome from the Fukushima accident, that nobody will get sick. If anybody does get sick, it will be covered up. It is truly as bad as that. And what we're talking about, I have to tell you, is essentially a global attack on the integrity of the human genome. This stuff is not just in Fallujah. You know, we are all in Fallujah. This stuff was found in air filters at Aldermaston in the United Kingdom. And you know, your uncle dies of cancer. Your dog gets a breast tumor. Your mother gets cancer. Everybody is touched by this, and this is a consequence of weapons fallout, a consequence of all of the nuclear power stations that are exploded or don't explode, just push this stuff out all the time, routinely. And the whole thing is covered up all the time, and nobody can do anything about it because everyone is frightened. The only people who do it, like a few people like me who basically don't care and scratch along with, you know, hardly any money, but we do need a bit of money to do some of these measurements, or to survive. At the moment, I have to say I'm selling my house because I've been attacked so violently by people coming from the nuclear industry that my sources, normal sources of income, have been cut off. I'm normally supported by a couple of charities in the United Kingdom, Roundtree charities, Quaker charities, people doing good works and so on. So I can survive on a low level. But scientists can't, you know. Scientists work for universities. This study that we were going to do in the Baltic Sea, I was going to do with Ole Johansson at the Karolinska Institute. As soon as it got learned that we were going to do this study, Ole lost all of his research funding and they took his laboratory away from him.
And it was months after Fukushima.
Yeah, and that was just after Fukushima too. So these are big dogs. They've got a lot of power, and most people are frightened of them, and that's the answer to your question.
Yes, please.
Although there is a concentration on Fallujah, but in reality there is many areas in Iraq suffered from the same thing. If you go to Al Ansar Street in Al-Najaf, we see in the same street about 52 persons suffering from cancer in the same time. Nowadays, 35 of them have been died. Many committees go to that place, and everybody say, and all the committees agree that there is no depleted uranium in that house. But you know, and you see now, it's unlogic thing that there is 52 persons in the same street in about 25 houses suffering from the same thing, is cancer, and there is nothing to do about them, and there is somebody say there is no depleted uranium here. In reality, we need independent committees far away from the political conflict worlds to say what's up there. You know, in that streets there is a poor people live there. They want to sell their houses and run away from that what we call it a death street, but they cannot because no one want to get risk and buy their houses. Therefore, they obliged to be in that street, which we called it the death street. Thanks a lot. I mean that we shouldn't stress or concentrate on just one area, that Al-Fallujah. We have Al-Basra, many people suffering there. We have Al-Najaf, many people suffering on cancer. Even in Baghdad, the center of Iraq, we find the cancer like we have cool or you have suffer from influenza. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I have a question about how to deal with the problem. I mean, we cannot move whole Iraqi people from all these places. Is there technologies to clean up? And if we know that is very expensive thing and maybe never will be 200%, but is there willingness here in this room to put United States in the to pay for this damage to Iraq? And this is a question for you and for the Iraqi representative of the regime in Iraq. I asked, did they, with all this knowledge, did they any time ask American to pay for this cleanup?
Well, these are two questions really. The first question is, can you clean it up, and how much would it cost? And the second question is, can you ask the Americans to pay damages for what they've done? To take the first question, you can probably clean up the environment, but I don't think that's the problem. I don't think that the environment is the problem anymore. I think it's the people. I think the uranium is in the people, and I think they are contaminated, and you can't really clean them up. That's the problem. You've destroyed the genome of these people, and so their children will have children who will have children who have children with congenital malformations, and this will go on. That's the first point. The second point is, what about the American, is making the Americans pay? Well, there is the Alien Talks something or another act. So it is possible to take the Americans to court for this. It can be done, but nobody will do it.
Okay, for the second part, even though I'm here just to talk about uranium and its influence for Iraqi people and suffering for people, in reality I'm the representative of the Minister of Higher Education. I'm not represented for the government to give political statements here. When we were in Luleå, we asked to establish an international committee under the advice of United States to guarantee United Nations to be independent, to prove that there is, and give us a real percentage of depleted uranium in Iraqi environment and its impact on Iraqi people. We also asked them to give them what we call compromise to the victims, and limit or specify the state and which person who are responsible for separate uranium, depleted uranium, not in Iraq and also in the regional states to Iraq, in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Well, I was contacted by about a year ago, after the first paper was published, by the WHO representative for Iraq, who said that we should have a meeting in Turkey to discuss what is going to be done. And the idea was to investigate these effects in Fallujah all over the whole of Iraq, because we know they're all over the whole of Iraq. We know, because there's enough evidence, mostly in the south, but it's not just in Fallujah. The reason we choose Fallujah is because if you're doing an epidemiological study, you have to choose something, and you have a limited amount of money. But I said, yeah, sure, we can do the whole of Iraq, no problem. But but if you want, and he wanted me to involve myself as an expert advisor or something, I said, well, I have to have control of the study because I don't trust anybody. And I need to be able to go in there and check all of the data and go into the hospitals and see the data as it comes out. And I need to have a few people that I can suddenly pop in there very quickly that they don't know that they're coming. And they can see what's going on. Because in this whole area, we are in James Bond territory. No question about it. No question about it. Anyway, as soon as that happened, that was the end of it. He said, well, we must have a meeting in Jordan. So I said, okay, when? So he said, well, I'm away at the moment. Well, give me some dates. So I gave him some dates. And then he said, oh, I'm awfully sorry, I'm in Pakistan during those dates. And so I said, well, actually, I said, when are you coming back? So he said, I'm coming back on some date. I said, well, I can do that date. And he said, and then I didn't hear any more. That was it. So don't expect too much from the United Nations,
Yeah,
right? The United Nations are a bunch of crooks.
Yeah.
I just want to say, the whole thing in radio, they were discussing about the hazardous landfills, and of course this is one of them because we have all those tanks that are not even moved, they are still
Right.
there, and the kids, they go there, they play, they even take souvenirs to their homes with lots, they keep it as necklace, and they play there, dolls, hand-to-mouth activities, and this is what we were talking about in the workshop. And as we had this, if you heard about this, my colleagues, they know about it because they are doctors in geology, they know about this phytoremediation, which is very cheap, it is simple.
You can't do it with uranium.
But not because you study about it, and you know, like sunflower, it can be used for
No, not for
radioactive
uranium.
elements.
I'm sorry, I know the world authority on this is a lady called Sylvia Hanneklaus, who I work with in Germany. She's at the German Agricultural Research Laboratory in Braunschweig, so you can contact her. She's gone all over the world to look for plants which will take uranium out of the soil, and the reason for this is that phosphate fertilizers are being used so much nowadays all over the world. You're putting phosphate every year, phosphate, 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 phosphate. And these fertilizers contain large amounts of uranium because uranium it binds very strongly to phosphate. That's why it binds to DNA, incidentally, because DNA is a phosphate. It has a phosphate backbone. So you find a lot of, so what they needed to do in Germany is they're looking for plants which will take uranium out of the soil. Now they found plants that will take everything out of the soil, cesium, copper, every element under the sun can be, but not uranium. And the reason is that the plants know, as a result of evolution, that uranium is very bad news. So they've created a special filter on the roots of the plants, and the French have done research on this at Fontenay-aux-Roses in Paris. Also, they're interested in uranium, and they found that the plants will keep the uranium out. So it's very, very difficult to do phytoremediation. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it's probably not going to help.
Belarusians have techniques.
Well, the problem also, as I said, is as far as the tanks are concerned, you can just pick them up and take them into the desert.
This is the first thing that should have been done.
Yeah, it
a long
should have
time
been done.
ago. So
That's
they're
right.
still there. They haven't moved it even from the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
They're still there. No one has moved them.
I know. I've been there. I've been there. Yeah, cheers. Okay. So that can be done, but I don't think the plants will work.
I feel a need to say something. All individuals are welcome here to a meeting, and we are very happy that some of the Iraqi researchers come. We've never been in favor of isolating the Iraqi researchers, just the opposite. We're part of an international campaign against the assassination of Iraqi academics that has been sanctioned by the United States and by the occupation authorities, the Iraqi occupation authorities. And we have nothing to do with the government of Iraq during that occupation, first when the Iraqis can exercise their self-determination. However, the fact that the United States now is, at least officially, even if we don't think it's correct, being forced to set a date to withdraw its troops, the fact that the Iraqi government under occupation feels itself under the pressure of the Iraqi people to make demands for the United States to get out and to take responsibility for this, I think just underscores the deep hatred for the occupation through wide sections of the Iraqi population. And we will continue to support the people of Iraq in reconquering their self-determination. And despite any of these disguises with Iraqization and secular divisions in the country that have been left as a result of the occupation. And we will continue from our side, together with the organizations that we work with, to defend the lives of the Iraqi academics, to be able to do their research, because in the end it's only the Iraqis themselves that are capable of doing this. And we think that once Iraq gets a government that is really representative of all the people of Iraq, this might be possible. And only then, maybe, can we have a situation in which it's possible to carry out research in different parts of the country. We know, the last time I met a doctor from Basra who explained that when the Americans occupied Basra, they forbade the people at the hospital from using computers to keep statistics on the cancer and the records and things like this. And this, of course, was supported by the puppets in Baghdad who gave orders to do whatever the Americans want to do. We're against the occupation of all these forces. We're for the Iraqis, for their self-determination and independence, and we think that this is one of the lasting effects of the war. We can't forget the occupation, we can't forget the war. The people of Iraq must not be left alone to pay the price of this occupation for generations to come. So thank you for coming today, and we hope that you continue to support the struggle of the Iraqis against the occupation and for full independence. Thank you for coming.